Hello there and welcome back. More now on the situation in Sudan, with tens of thousands trying to still flee the country. At least 16,000 have crossed the border into Egypt, but there's pressure on all of the nation's borders, compounding what is already a fraught situation for the East African country's neighbours. Let's bring in now Carl Schembri, spokesperson on Sudan for the Norwegian Refugee Council. Carl, good to have you with us this evening, and thank you very much for your time. I know it must be really busy for your organisation. Just talk to us about the situation as you understand it. It's some of those border crossings for people trying to leave the fighting.
Well, it's a very unclear picture so far because we don't really have accurate figures of people trying to cross, and parts of the crossings that they are using are leading to pretty deprived areas, which need all the support of the international community. We've heard people crossing into Egypt, taking days, queuing at the border. The picture is less clear what's happening in Chad and South Sudan. But these are all countries that need international support so that they can keep the borders open. It's really imperative that they keep the borders open to these 100% genuine refugees fleeing the unthinkable. What's folding in front of us is a terrifying nightmare. When you think that what is happening inside Sudan is happening while the world is watching, it's just unthinkable how this might develop when the world will stop paying attention.
Yeah, and as we're reporting this evening, it's being announced by the Sudanese Army that they have extended their ceasefire by 72 hours, so I'm hopeful that will provide some respite. But you mentioned the borders where people are crossing. Let's just leave Egypt for now. I want to focus in on South Sudan and Chad. I mean, South Sudan, of course, people will remember as a country that is already facing a humanitarian crisis, some 2.3 million people already internally displaced. I mean, how equipped is a nation like South Sudan to deal with an influx of people?
Well, we're looking at a scenario where South Sudanese refugees in Sudan are being forced to return to their country of origin. So it's as bad as death, as in you've fled because of persecution, because of conflict, environmental reasons, and then you're forced to go back. That's South Sudanese. There will be also Sudanese who will have to flee according to where they are. So it is extremely dire, and they would need a lot of help to be able to accommodate these people, but also to keep the borders open, because it is really imperative that they do keep the borders open.
You mentioned that again. Is there a danger that the borders could get closed into those two nations?
Yes, and it's not clear what the process for people to cross is, and that's why there's a whole lack of clarity, which we're hoping to find out, especially through the coordination of the United Nations.
Let's talk a little bit about Darfur, if we can, Carl. Obviously, an area again in Sudan that has faced much tribulation in recent years, and there are some 1.5 million refugees already in that region. Fighting is flaring there. What's your understanding? I understand the NRC do have a presence down there.
We do. My colleagues are all on edge right now and figuring out their next movements, if there is any possibility of that, as the fighting intensifies. We have colleagues across Darfur. Also in Jenaina, the fighting is really intensifying, getting wilder as we go during what is officially a ceasefire. So yes, my colleagues, Sudanese and expats, are all in it together, and they are literally fleeing for their lives as we speak.
And Carl, just finally then, talk to us about what's needed from the international community to try and help these areas. I mean, we've laid out in our conversation just how those that are already internally displaced, those that have already fled war and suffering, are now being forced to flee again. What kind of international effort is needed to try and give these people the resources that they need at this time?
Well, first of all, we need every pressure possible, whatever there is, to even intensify further with the two warring parties, to spare civilians, to stop this insanity that is tearing apart the country, and to give us a real respite so that we can reach the most vulnerable. We have been unable to work on the ground since all this started on the 15th of April. My colleagues were under fire, and we can't reach the most vulnerable. Before all this started, 16 million Sudanese people in Sudan needed humanitarian assistance. Imagine how many more now being on the move, carrying nothing, desperately for water and food and shelter. And of course, we need the international community to be generous with its funding when we get to really responding. We're not there yet. We're not even responding because the fighting is not allowing us to. And we hope that the real ceasefires are agreed to, and that the two parties stop making a sham of their own announcements, because it has been deadly. They've broken their own ceasefires, and civilians have died, and are also colleagues of ours in the aid sector.
That's right. OK, Carl Schembri from the Norwegian Refugee Council. Appreciate your time this evening, and wish you all the very best in your luck, and to your colleagues. Thank you very much for being with us.